Like I said, hip to the piano.
I'm in church, right? I can't read it all, but you try to teach. I teach a three-part thing. FEA, in the key of F, all the diatonic chords. Before they get to all these big chords, they have to learn these three parts. Then they have to learn all the secondary dominants above each one. And they said, I thought it was going to be easy. It was a long ways from what you would hear Ella Fitzgerald do on the radio to what was being taught in the classroom. You have to be involved in where the music's coming from to really get inside of it. And that's not an easy discussion either, because it gets involved in sociological and other extra musical things. But some of the things we used to call extra musical are really the soul of music. Yeah, in terms of your panethic approach and your thought about music from other areas and around, it's one planet, my goodness. And all the resources you have. Just pick up a book by Yusef, this repository on scales. And he went beyond what Solinsky tried to do in terms of ethnicity. But it's a combination of all these things. What you have to do is, as a theorist, teacher, educator, take a look at all of that and things that are truthful and maximally transferable, use them, combine them, make your own theories, become a theorist. All these guys were theorists. They had their own ways of doing things. What made them theorists? From a logician standpoint, I always say that they used deontic logic, which has three operators. They knew what was permitted, what was obligatory, and what was forbidden. The guys who got their doctorate with me at the university, Bill Barron, he would do an awful lot of exercises in symbolic logic because he wanted to make sure that he could think correctly. Of course, I sort of insisted that if they were going to get their degrees, they had to be willing to translate some of that genius of musical syntax into logical syntax, culturally filtered for the kids that needed it.
Roland Wiggins was in that little segment of the School of Education that it's called Music Education or Arts Education. And the goal was to use any venue to try to get people credentialed and through so they could go back into their urban communities and be better teachers and better administrators. And that's the context in which Roland and I would talk about things. And that's when I realized how unique he was.
How those concepts spill over into teaching kids who are 5 and 6 years old how to think better, how to read better, how to deal with mathematics, how to deal with a term that we coined at that time. Roland coined that, camouflage education, to make sure that people were learning and they didn't know they were learning.
The repository of scales and melodic patterns, I owe a great deal of thanks to Dr. Wiggins, because it was some of his speculative ideas concerning melodies, rhythms, and intervals that led me to produce that book.
He raised my awareness on a lot of levels, and music was being just the entry point. And then I was able to apply a lot of the things that I saw him do, a lot of my colleagues do, just because I had he made that connection for me.
And so when he came to my apartment around 72, 73, I remember telling some friends of mine at that time, I said, yeah, this teacher that I had years ago, Roland Wiggins, came to see me. I said, and for the first time I was able to kind of understand what he was saying.
First time he tried to explain to me what he was doing, I didn't quite get it. He said, everything is based on mathematics. And you kind of say, well, yeah, but what does it have to do with what you're doing? You're in the arts part, you're not teaching math education.
And intellectually, that caught my attention was not just how brilliant he is and he was, but how he's able to apply that to the use of language. You know, he kept talking about logic and linguistics. Here was this musician talking about logic and linguistics.
His analyses could lead to another educational component that we are not currently aware of, which is also very timely because his analysis deals very heavily with the use of computers.
Before I ever saw anybody else use computers, when they were just first coming in and they were these exotic things, you know, stuck in rooms someplace. Roland would have a little suitcase with a telephone in it, and he could stick the end of that telephone around the computer. He'd take your phone, stick it on it, and that would get him down to a big computer somewhere where he could use it, which is, we're using the internet. It was like a very primitive, very early version of that.
Good evening. I'm Chuck Harris. Welcome to this month's edition of Say Brother Times 2. Tonight, our first story is about the computerization of music. Producer Barbara Barrow Murray interviews Professor Roland Wiggins of Hampshire College, who gives us a new music concept.
Around 1950, I was involved in teaching in public schools and in a small college, Combs College of Music. And in teaching, I found that there were special needs for teaching devices and teaching approaches to handle the student population we had. And the student population was mainly a creative one, minority students in South Philadelphia, West Philadelphia, but they were highly musical and involved in using the intuitive approach. I guess there's some problem conceptually with people saying, well, here comes the computer again. It's getting ready to get in the way of an art form. I'm talking really about the utilization and not the misuse of computer technology. The idea of compositional musical analysis is an idea that has been both intriguing and exciting to our project here at Hampshire College. Much of the work that's been done in acoustical musical analysis and synthesis evolves around being able to take a trumpet, for example, the trumpet sound as a musical note, and then analyzing it into its several waveforms or musical parts. In this case, they would be acoustical parts. And coming up with some type of formula that represents mathematically what all these waveforms would be in concert or together, you might say.
It was clear to him that this was a way to get young people who could not be taught in a traditional way to see, in fact, that within themselves, if they could comprehend the things around them in terms of order and numbers and so forth, their creativity would be validated, their self-esteem would be validated, and that they would learn how to think better. And it's a completely non-traditional way of teaching people. And there are a lot of people that think it doesn't make a bit of sense because they don't believe that mathematics has that kind of power.
Roland has this notion of that education is larded with fat, and you have to take some of the fat off of it to really get to the essence of the problem. And really, it was quite true. I mean, I found it out when he taught my classes, how he taught very complicated theoretical subjects. So he made them quite clear.
The greatest theorist we got in this country, he's it. That's what it is. He's the greatest theorist. I say it all the time. I say it when I go to Europe. I say it anywhere in the world.
He has a powerhouse of ideas about music. He introduced me to symbolic logic. So I'm very grateful.
And I sat in on his teaching my own classes with the students because I was learning like they were learning.
It was realized how deep and how bright and how special his thinking was and probably still is.
I remember Roland talking to Jackie Robinson about Mama PC. What was that? And explaining that to Jackie, and Jackie just starting to glow, with the understanding of it, and that happened in the basement of the Apollo Theater. I just remember that, it's just to see it happen, it was just amazing. It was amazing.
I think we'll have to wrap it.
Yeah. Hey, man, listen. That pentatonic could be heavy, huh? Yeah. There you go. Ain't nothing but us.
Weston.